Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons in the NHL for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey, although we're going to start today with a little football talk because Tom Laidlaw has a beef.
I am not a happy camper, and you and I disagree on this subject.
Yeah, we do.
Well, first of all, I was watching the Jets in the first game, so maybe that tainted my give me a bad taste anyways. They were terrible. But I kept hearing from the broadcasters all day long and talking about football, how a lot of teams, not all of them, played no starters in the preseason. And even in some cases, they were saying that players just aren't in shape yet. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's 17 games. These are professional athletes. They're not in shape with all the methods they have to take care of themselves, all the knowledge we have now about taking care of themselves. I just think that for the fans, they have these preseason games now. And in some cases, the teams aren't even playing their starters. So fans are paying for the preseason games. They don't get to see the starters. And then they start the regular season. The starters aren't ready to go. It takes them a few games to get ready. I thought it was just some terrible football yesterday. But again, I'm watching the Jets and the Giants. So maybe that's part of the reason there. So you disagree?
I do. Yeah. I've thought for a long time, and they've moved in this direction that we should do away with NFL preseason. It's the sport with the highest incidence of injuries. And the injuries are usually take a good chunk of their season away from these players. The NFL has sort of changed the rules because they recognize as well. It's almost, this is an exaggeration, but it's almost two-hand touch now for the quarterbacks. You really, you can't go at them. And the reason they've done it is because of the injuries. And yet they have these preseason games. Some teams, nobody plays their starters a lot, which makes a lot of sense to me. Some play them a little bit. And I just don't think you need them. I mean, you're basically, they exist essentially for revenue, and you make fans pay for these games when they don't count in the standings. They're meaningless, and people say, well, that's how you kind of prove you're on the team. But I say baloney. In Detroit here, we have a Rodriguez. Anybody who watched Hard Knocks, who made the team as a starter in the first week of training camp. He hadn't even played a game yet. They were saying he was a starter because, the training camp is where it all happens. They see it every day. They watch technique. And, a lot of the NFL teams are moving toward controlled scrimmages, where they can keep an eye on things and control the way they're going to play. And I think that's a better way to do it. Like I said, I think the preseason and athletes today, and this, they work out year round. Like the days when
they're taking the task. So they're talking yesterday about how and again, not all of them, but a lot of guys are saying yesterday just weren't in shape. They were saying in the latter part of the game, they weren't in shape to play.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but I don't know. Do we trust broadcasters to know exactly what's going on? I don't know, but I would say just if anybody watched the Hard Knocks every year, those athletes come in knowing they're going to have to bang heads in the opening days. I think for the most part in hockey, that's certainly true. And I would assume it's true in all sports.
Well, in hockey, definitely. Yeah. When I first started, it's funny, I think back to when I first started, the older players would put away the skates at the end of the season, not touch them or work out anything. But now, if you don't come to camp in shape now, then you're in trouble. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do we think NFL players are less dedicated than hockey players?
Maybe I have a bad taste in my mouth because I watched the Jets and the Giants yesterday, and the Giants were better in the second half. But early, it was just like, and it wasn't just the conditioning part too. It just seemed like they just weren't prepared to play. Timing down. A lot of the receivers weren't running the right routes and everything. We talked about in the Green Bay game. Maybe it's just a different level of player now that Aaron.
Well, I mean, and I think you're going to see that no matter how many preseason games you have. Is that it takes a while to get in the rhythm and in sync and in game condition. Even if you played 4 preseason games, you have such a large roster. You're trying to work everyone in. So. Yeah. I don't think when they were playing all those preseason games that they came into game 1 and looked the same way they did in the game 8.
And maybe that's the case. And maybe it's just, and maybe it's just because I watched the Jets in the first game of the season too. They were,
the Jets aren't a very good team. In Detroit, the football was good. The guys, I mean, the players that you thought would be good were good. I mean, Josh Allen didn't play hardly at all. Maybe he didn't play at all. I remember at one point that he hadn't played. But he performed well in his first game on Thursday night. So, I think we've moved beyond the need for, I would say the same is true in the NHL. The NHL it's much more of a game or a gate revenue driven league. Like they need all of their revenue. They don't have the incredible television contract. I mean, it's much improved from the old days, but it's still not enough to sustain teams. Like in the NFL, they don't have to. They could play to empty stadiums and still make money.
Yeah, their revenue. We went through this the lockout, right, or the pandemic, where we had the numbers down. Wasn't the 60% of the league, the NHL league's revenue comes from the gate receipts?
Yeah, it's still very, very high, and they count on that. So even these preseason games, I think, even though if we've noticed, we used to have these games, and we still have some where you play in these small venues and 4,000 or 5,000. Of course, that's the size of Arizona State, where the Coyotes are going to play this year too. Yeah. But you have them in the smaller. But now all of a sudden, we're seeing more of these preseason games in the big arenas, and of course, we know who has to pay for those season ticket holders. So you're not going to go. I have been as many of you know, a Lions season ticket holder for a lot of years. For a lot of years, I couldn't go to very many games because I was busy, covering the NHL and so forth. But and I've always had to pay for preseason game, and I can say that I have never ever gone to an NFL preseason game. So
is that right? And you guys were your wife was down on the field yesterday too, wasn't she? Didn't you post?
Well, there's a nice picture of her on my Facebook page with Rory. My wife is friends with everyone, including the Detroit Lions mascot. Who I had a little picture with Rory the mascot yesterday. I kept reporting all day how popular her and Rory were. That she had over 80 likes, so she was quite amused by how I enjoyed taking a picture of her and Rory. So, it's interesting to me in terms of the NFL, and I want to talk about this in terms of the relationship with hockey. I don't want to do it now because I got some other subjects, but just to whet everyone's appetite. I think the NFL believes that they have it right, that one game a week is perfect.
Yep.
And they think 17-game season, so every game is important.
Yep.
And my question to you is, and you can think about it, and we'll get to it. Maybe we won't get till Wednesday, but do we have it right? Have we figured it out that we play the right amount of games every year, and the playoff rounds are right for, is that the exact amount that we should have? Or do we have it right, or do we just have momentum for the size of our schedule and so forth that we just blindly follow and we don't really kind of second guess ourselves? So with that, we'll talk about that later. It's a much bigger subject.
Yep.
But I want to start off because I know Tom will have opinions on this. The Montreal Canadiens named Nick Suzuki as their captain. He came over in a trade, was a Pacioretty trade, wasn't it? For Suzuki?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, it came over from Vegas, and now at age 23, he's captain. And Tom knows where I'm going with this. In the NHL, it used to be the captain, and this was a long time ago, because this trend I'm talking about of younger captains has been going back to the 1980s. I mean, Steve Yzerman, Vinny Lecavalier, and we tend now to think of the captain as the best player on the team, instead of the grizzled veteran who might be great in the dressing room and all that. And I guess my question to Tom is simply this: does the best player have to be the captain, or are we making a mistake by just not identifying the guy who's most important in that dressing room in terms of speaking up?
Right. Well, James Patrick said something I thought was fantastic. We had a discussion probably about a year ago, and he said, listen, the person you should ask who the captain should be are the trainers, because the trainers are in the locker room all the time. They're there when the coaches are not there, because sometimes players have a tendency to, when the coach comes in the room, to maybe act a little bit differently. But when there's no coaches there, then you really see the true colors. And I'm not saying that in a totally negative way about players, but so I thought that was a very interesting statement. Again, for me, it does not have to be the best player on the team. To me, it's got to be. Now, you don't always have it. Like the Rangers have picked Trouba to be their captain. And apparently, I don't think he's a really loud guy, and he's certainly not the best player. He's one of the best players. But he, I think, leads by example out there on the ice, and that's what in my mind, that's why they wanted him as captain. But yeah, I don't, because there's lots of times that the best player isn't the best leader in the room. It doesn't mean he's a bad leader, but there's some guys that are in the room. When you're in that room, there's some guys when they speak, like the player, everybody else really listens. Like the room gets quiet. Everybody, he's going to speak now. Like I spoke all the time. I was always talking, obviously. But so I was an assistant captain most of the time. I was captain, and I think I had, you like to think you had respect for the players, but to me, it's that guy that when he speaks up. Dave Taylor was like that in Los Angeles when he got up and he spoke. Really, people really paid attention. They respected him a great deal. He was an intelligent guy. He didn't always speak, so when he did speak, it was best. And he was one of the best players, but he wasn't always the best player. Even when Wayne Gretzky was on the team, he was still the captain. So, to answer your question, to me, it doesn't have to be the best player. If it is the best player, that's great, because then he can lead by example even more on the ice. He can score those big goals. But there's a lot of guys that they're not the best player on the team, but they do all those little things right, all the hits, the shot blocking, all that kinds of stuff. So it's a good question, though. Very good.
Do you does age matter at all?
Yeah. Well, Dave Maloney was captain at 20 years old, I think it was, when he was with the Rangers. And I don't think then it didn't last. When Barry Beck came in, then Barry became captain after that. That's a tough, I guess it really depends on the individual, right? There are some young guys that are very mature when they come in because you've got to stand up. It's great to be a captain of a team when the team's winning. I mean, you're just standing up there, keep going, guys. But when things aren't going well or if something's happened, some discipline issues happen, then that player has to get up and have the respect of his teammates to get up and talk in front of the team. Again, if you're 23 and you're mature enough to do that, and Suzuki, from the quotes I was reading about, seems like he's a mature young man, but it is tougher when you're young. You don't have that experience. You haven't been through things. Even I go back to college. I was very fortunate to be a 4-year captain there because I went to Northern Michigan first year they had it. And the difference between me, and again, this is younger, obviously, me as an 18-year-old captain and me as a 21-year-old captain was huge. Some of the difference I remember speaking in front of the team when I was a senior, there's just no way I could have done that as a junior. So it does matter, but again, each individual is different.
Yeah. I think there are some things that are important in naming a captain. Like, I think he's got to be at least a viable player. Like, you can't have a 14-minute player as your captain. Yep. And there have been some incredible leaders among tough guys. That are they're when they stand up, people listen to them as well. But they can't be captains either because generally in the old days they weren't getting a lot of playing time. So I think that makes it difficult. But here's a question I want to pose to you because I've thought about this and I don't have an answer, and I even hesitate to bring it up because I don't even know exactly how I feel about it. But I've thought about this. One of the issues that we do have is with captains in the NHL, because it is a very important position. I mean, the respect that a captain gets on an NHL team, it's like no other sport. Like, you don't even know who the captains are of an NFL team. Or, you certainly knew when, on the rare occasions when they name a captain on a baseball team, because it's rare. You just don't hear that. So, I remember when Sal Bando was captain of the Oakland A's when I was a kid. Like, it was a major story, something of that nature as well. But I wondered, because captain role, once you get in, it's hard to get those out. And should we view it almost like coaches? Like, does the message get stale when the team changes over? Should the same guy be captain? Maybe the answer is yes, because it should be tribal. You pass down the culture as you go along. But I've often thought that maybe captain should be year to year, because what happens. We've seen it many times when a young player comes up and all of a sudden he looks like he's the guy that everybody looks to. Yeah. There's some guy entrenched there. And then either they have to remove the captaincy from him or the guy has to volunteer it. And it's always a sticky situation.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it before, Dave Taylor in Los Angeles, right? He was captain of the team. Then Wayne Gretzky got traded there. And, those are I think it would be kind of awkward in some cases for a guy like a Dave Taylor, because he's thinking himself, okay, I've earned the right, being in this locker room by the players that were here before to name me as the captain. But now Wayne Gretzky comes in. Should I be offering up the seat to Wayne Gretzky, or should I just accept it? They all seem to handle it well, and Dave continued to be captain. I guess I'd have to, and you mentioned it a few times. To me, one of the guys who was a great leader by the way he played was Steve Yzerman. So let's say, okay, he's named captain, and now the next year somebody else comes along, like a Nick Lidstrom comes along, and he now becomes that leader. Is it what happens? Do you take the C away from a Steve Eisman?
I
Right. That's
know.
right. Yeah.
Well, that's why, I mean, do we treat it sort of like, college sports where, you're changing because you really, the makeup of the team is different from year to year. Now, we talk about how this is the last hurrah for Boston, and Pittsburgh still has their leadership group that they've had for a long time. But, there is, the team does evolve and it changes. And I wondered whether, every year there should be, sort of a, you're open to the changing of the guard a little bit.
Right.
But
and
I don't have an answer for that.
I know it's a great question. This is a fantastic subject. I like this stuff. And again, who picks the coach? Do the captain? Do the coaches pick the captain, or does the team pick the captain? That's
I mean, I don't know what happened with you, but I have the sense now that it's a coach's pick.
Yeah. But there are still some cases where they do refer.
Vote on it.
Yeah, but there's some cases I've heard too where the coaches will ask the players, they'll take a vote, but then the coaches will pick whoever they want anyways. They just want to see what the team felt, which is fine. I think that's. But again, the danger sometimes is it becomes a popularity contest too, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I remember when I was a youth coach, not in hockey but in other sports. The way I always dealt is I let the kids vote on a captain, and then I would name one as well, so that we'd have.
Gotcha.
So that you're assured of that. It isn't going to be solely a popularity contest. That you're going to get someone who recognizes, and sometimes it was one and the same. Young players are pretty smart about who
they really are. They really are.
They should be. So
Susan's fired up here today. The Rangers just trade their captains. Susan, woo! Nice day.
Yeah, way to go. Yeah. Well, that ends up being how they deal with it sometimes. So another subject too, which I've seen it, and there's been much discussion about this in baseball, but I saw something this morning that made me think it's in our sport too. And that is, in baseball, people are talking about, we're no longer rewarding, and I'm talking about financially rewarding, the players who do the little things, moving the runner along by hitting to the right side of the field, to hit and run, the hit and run players who can bunt, players who can, push the ball to right field when it needs to go to right field to move the runners into scoring position, or to move them to third base with less than 2 outs. Those players are not getting pay bumps. We're not giving them a lot of money because we're paying the home run hitters.
Yeah.
And the argument is being that it's kind of changed the game. Instead of wanting to be a 300 hitter, now 270 hitters are good hitters because batting averages are down. Because players are concerned, they got softball swings. They want launch angles, swing velocity, and they're looking at it. The analytics has something to do with this as well. But, the teams haven't presented it by they no longer want to pay, guys who can do those little things. Well, I was thinking that, we value character and such, that maybe it isn't going in that direction for us. But then I saw Mikey Anderson signing in Los Angeles. And for those of you who don't know Mikey Anderson, he's more of a stay-at-home defenseman. I think he had 8 points last year. But when I watched the Kings play, he is so visible. He plays 20 minutes a game. He's a stay-at-home defenseman. And they're giving him $1 million. Like, I just think that is such a deal. Now, are they just not paying him because he has 8 points, that he doesn't have enough points? And I get he's a young player, but, that just seems low. Like, 1.8.
Did he have arbitration rates or anything, or where was he at in this?
I don't know the answer to that, but it just struck me that Mikey Anderson is more important to the Kings than $1 million player. So
yeah, that is kind of. I mean, $1 million is still a lot of money, but oh man,
it's a lot of money, but it isn't in comparison to what's happening in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, role players get $1 million, and I think he's more than a role player.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a slap in the face, to be honest with you, compared to what everybody else is making. That is interesting. Yeah. Again, if they had the leverage where they didn't have to pay him anymore and he couldn't go anywhere else, it's pretty much he's got to accept whatever they give him. But and then under the cap system, it's hard. But anywhere you can save money under cap, so you can pay the top end guys. that's what they have to do as management there. But yeah, because I can relate, right? I mean, that's the kind of player I was. Maybe played a few more minutes than that, but yeah, it's more like now you're sitting in that locker room, and it's a little bit, I don't know if embarrassing is the right word or not. When I played, it wasn't as big a deal because we didn't have salary disclosure. We didn't know what each other made. But nowadays it's so public. It's kind of a ranking of where your importance on the team, right? If the top guy is making $10 million and you're down at $1 million, it's almost like, well, do I even matter on the team? So
yeah, well, and I mean, do you go out if he goes out to dinner with some of the guys and they say to him, "Hey, Mikey, let me pick this up for you," it's like, I mean,
yeah, you better pick it up for me.
So. Exactly. I don't know. I was just struck by that only because, again, I'm really appreciative when I watch the Kings of his contributions. Like I think he is, he's kind of vital to them. He's not Bobby Orr, but I don't know.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. That's a really interesting thought because I'm trying to think of the room dynamic. They have like Rob Blake and Luc Robitaille. I know them well. They're smart guys. They know about the character and the team and the culture and all that kinds of stuff. So that's the kind of deal. Yeah. It's a rare deal that you have to look in the locker room and say, how's this going to go over in the locker room?
Yeah.
How does this affect the team dynamic?
Well, I mean, in fairness, like I didn't even investigate, just like you said, you asked me and I didn't know. I didn't look up whether he had arb rights. So I didn't take into account. I mean, he hasn't been around long, so I'm sure that plays a big role in it. He doesn't have a lengthy resume and a long body of work, but I'm telling you, at some point, don't you give him a little nudge just out of respect for, that he comes to play and.
You'd like to think at least they sit him down and say, listen, you are a valuable part of this team. And we love what you do for our team, but this is really all we can afford under the cap. We have the leverage. Once you have more leverage, then you'll be able to get paid more money.
Well, I should have been better prepared because I could have gone in and looked up, his zone starts, and I could have looked up, what his Corsi rating was, and really got into the analytics. I mean, maybe his analytics aren't as good as my eye test, but I would guess they're okay. But it's interesting to see. Just one little note here. I really like Aston Reese as a role player, Zach Aston Reese, and he got signed to a PTO, a professional tryout offer with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I have a feeling he's going to make that team. I think he's a real nice role player, and I think he can be valuable. I don't think he's any more than a role player, but I think he's a good role player. So
those tryouts are interesting, right? So basically, all the other guys are there, well, except for the younger players, they've signed contracts, so they know they're on the team. Like a guy like Austin Matthews and all these players are on the team. Where you get this young kid coming in now on a tryout agreement, so it's does the coach has to play him a certain? Does the coach treat him any differently? Because they will obviously want to get a look to see how good he really is and where he fits in with the team. So those are always interesting things. I know in the past the Toronto organization didn't want to do those PTOs, but because there's a lot of pressure from the media. So if the guy goes out and has a great training camp, the media is all clamoring for you to sign him. And again, on the PTO, once it's expired, it has an expiry date on it. He can go sign with any other NHL team too. He doesn't have to sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think the media misrepresent what they are. Like, and Tom knows this, but sometimes teams bring in players and they have no interest in that player. They do it as a favor to the player or to the agent. They have a good relationship. He represents players on their team, and the agent says, "Hey, I need to get my guy out there to play in training camp games, and teams like to have a lot of players for scrimmages and everything. So can you help me out? Can you bring my guy in and let him play some?" And they say, "Yeah, sure, we can do that." And then the idea is that and players sometimes sign PTOs with teams they don't even want to play for, but again, they just need to get out there and to play and to be in a training camp and to be seen. So it isn't necessarily that the team, sometimes it is, but it isn't necessarily the team that says, we think this guy might fit. Not always. Sometimes it is, but not always. Sometimes the guy just needs a place to showcase his talents and his ability, and they get in there. The game is so much more complicated than people,
Yeah.
think about. There's always a lot of moving parts
Absolutely.
to what's going on, and
we brought this up before the show. I just was reading on the NHL site that Erik Karlsson in San Jose is saying he did not ask for a trade. I didn't see where he had asked for a trade, but he's claiming he did not. So he's obviously saying something isn't true that somebody else said. So that's interesting.
Well, it is, and I would say a Erik Karlsson trade request is like me saying, I'd really like to win the lottery. He's a very difficult player to trade. He just in this environment, with his salary, that's spitting into the wind.
Right. It was the old Erik Karlsson that they had in Ottawa. Like that player could have got traded. He's a very valuable player.
Let's put it this way: even the great Erik Karlsson with an $11 million salary, I think that's what it is. I think like now before the season, trying to trade an $11 million player right now.
Yeah. What team with cap space would want to take him on, right?
I mean, even if he was great, there'd be a lot of maneuvering to try to figure out if it could be done. But that would be very difficult. Like
Vegas will find a way to do it. Let them do it.
Yeah, but they'd have to trade Jack Eichel.
That's funny.
So, but speaking of that, just an alert for everyone. You get those ESPN alerts on your phones when things are happening.
Yeah.
Things are not happening in Detroit regarding Dylan Larkin and Tyler Bertuzzi.
Oh,
they will be unrestricted free agents next summer. I think we all just assumed, I know I did, that Dylan Larkin, a hometown hero, born and raised in the Detroit area, grew up a Red Wings fan, captain of the team, coming off a great season, that he would be signed by now. Maybe it's no problem whatsoever. Maybe it's just taking some time, and they're haggling over the last $500,000.
Sure.
So maybe there's really no concern, but I thought it would be done by now. Training camp's a couple of weeks away. I thought it would be done by now because of all the factors I just listed.
Fly Steve Yzerman. Using all the time he's got. Players don't want to go into the season without a contract done.
Yeah, they don't want to think about it. But there's a danger in that because what do they always say? I'm not negotiating after the start of the season. Although, careful what you wish for. Doesn't Dylan want to play in Detroit? I think he does.
Yeah, exactly. So, when people say I'm not going to negotiate during the season, well, okay, if Steve Yzerman comes along, knocks at your door, and says, "Listen, let's get this deal done," we say, "No, I don't want to talk to you." Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's a good point.
Yeah, but you're right though. Players do that. Aaron Judge has done that here with the New York Yankees, and for they haven't talked. Maybe they have talked behind the scenes, but
wasn't Aaron Judge born to play with the Yankees?
Yes, totally. Yeah. People keep mentioning the San Francisco Giants. I guess he's from out there. That's the speculation. If he wasn't to stay with the Yankees, he would go out there. But the Yankees need him there too. They say when you go to a Yankee game, it's half the people have an Aaron Judge jersey on. They can't let him go. He's got 54 home runs or 55 home runs now. So.
Yeah, he's a beastly hitter.
And he's a class guy. He's another Derek Jeter kind of player off the field. He's just fantastic the way he handles the media, what he does. He never gets in trouble. He's your typical guy that could, like I said, he is a Derek Jeter kind of player. So, he's not going anywhere.
Just to wrap up that conversation, and the other thing that hasn't happened, of course, is there's no deal with Tyler Bertuzzi.
Oh,
I feel like there's more to worry about if you're a Red Wings fan.
Really?
I not based on anything because Steve Yzerman is very Lou Lamoriello-esque in his secrecy. But I've sensed there's, he's negotiated a couple of deals with Tyler. It always takes longer. It feels like there's friction, and Yzerman, from what I'm told, wants to view contract negotiations not in terms of statistical comparison, but what do you contribute to a successful team? And so like the 30-goal season that Tyler Bertuzzi just had, I don't know that Steve will be as impressed by that as the contributions he makes. And I think he makes a lot of contributions, by the way, to a successful team.
Because he's the only one to not get vaccinated, too, right?
He did not.
So obviously he's a pretty strong-willed man. The only guy in the National Hockey League to not get vaccinated. So.
Right, and he's going to miss. As of now, it certainly could change, but it didn't change during the baseball season. He's going to miss 9 more games again this season. So
we're going into Canada?
Yeah, that's not changed yet.
Has that changed? Wow.
No, I mean baseball players, unless I missed it, but baseball players couldn't play there.
You're
So
probably right. I guess I've just been under the loop on that. Yeah.
yeah, so unvaccinated coming, crossing the border. I mean, that you would assume that it's going to change at some point.
Yeah.
Speaking of all that,
Have
but
we have a show since the Queen passed away?
No.
Did we do it? We have not. Oh.
no. And she, of course, dropped the puck in a hockey game. Mike Ricci
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Queen. Yeah, it's amazing. And it breaks down. The monarchy breaks down along generation gaps. Like I saw a poll that said 69% of the older people in UK love the monarchy, and less than 40. It's 49% like it if they're like 35 and younger. So
what role do they play? Is it more of just a figurehead role now? Like
it's more just a figurehead for sure. Yeah, it's a constitutional monarch, which means it's built into the Constitution, but they rubber stamp the parliament and all that stuff. So
and they take in a lot of tax revenue too, don't they?
They get a lot. That has become one of the issues, because especially now where they're hit. The war has created, and we're seeing it, of course, in the U.S. as well. The inflation, and and can they continue to spend so much money on the monarchy when people are struggling to make ends meet? That is one of the issues that they'll be facing on this. I wanted to make a point, and we see a little bit of this in hockey. Anybody's been to a hockey game, there are guys who stay around after and throw pucks in the crowd. And I know in Detroit, in Joe Louis, there used to be a little hole in the ice for the cameras, and players would go over there and slip a puck to a kid and all that. And I saw something in an NFL game I've never seen before. My wife and I went to the game, and we were there early. And so before the actual warm-up, the players come out and they walk around and they throw footballs around and they stretch and all that. And the quarterback for the Lions, Jared Goff, and also Jamal Williams, the running back, came out, and the first one I saw do it was Goff. He started playing catch with fans in the stands. Throwing footballs, and a couple of them he threw 35, 40 yards right to the guy.
Right.
And not only that, but I told my wife it was impressive how everybody caught the ball, number one. And secondly, that they threw it back and would get it close, that he didn't have to run all over to get it.
That's good.
So it's impressive. And I thought, like, wow, I mean, you talk about winning over fans and fan interaction. Yeah. I mean, that was impressive. I've never seen that. I've covered sports for 40 years, and I've covered, more than 100 NFL games that I have never seen.
I guess I haven't either. I've seen in baseball where some of the outfielders are throwing the ball back and forth.
Throwing the balls in, but I've never seen people play catch.
I know.
With the guy. Now, it would be, but
Aaron Judge does that. He plays catch with them. They go back and forth playing catch.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Wow, so in baseball, but I'd never seen it in football.
No, I had not either. I hadn't heard it. Imagine how the person would feel. You're right. What a great move by those players, right? Because remember, it's smart by them. The revenue that they get for their salaries comes from the fans spending money at the game. So it makes sense to make those fans happy, right? Get them involved in the game. It's a good move.
Yeah, no. And the other thing too is, yesterday the security, and I thought it was somewhat ironic because it was the anniversary of 9/11, that the security, when you go through and you got to go through the the metal detector, it was as different as anything I've ever seen yesterday. Like 100 people could walk in 2 minutes. You just went one right after another. You could hold your phone in your hand, and I've never seen since 9/11. Usually you got to take your stuff out of your pocket and put it in and walk through. They just tell everybody, put your phone in your hand, walk through. If you get stopped, we may stop you. And it was they moved like 1,000 people through in 10 minutes. It was it was ridiculous. I mean, cool. Ridiculous in a good way. ridiculous.
Totally. And the place is packed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I like that field. Like they've got the windows up top there too. That's a nice field.
Yeah, it is a good field, and especially for an indoor field. Obviously I like football on grass, old school, but for a indoor field, it's really a nice field. It feels fun. It feels festive.
So, and your wife's a vegan. She vegan or vegetarian?
Yeah, she is a vegan. Yes.
Vegan. Now, so what does she eat? Do they got food for her there?
There's nothing. We checked. This was the first year, so we made the rounds. We walked around to everything to see if there was anything. The only thing there was a pretzel. She could eat a soft pretzel was the only thing.
You think they have like some healthier stuff there?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm shocked at that because I recently went to Wrigley Field. My wife was not with me, but I was with a gentleman who does not eat meat but wanted a vegetarian hot dog. And in Wrigley Field, and of course they're known for their meat, their sausages and dogs and stuff. They do have a vegan dog there. So, and if you go to their website, it tells you it's you go to section 19. Yeah. But there was zero things for my wife to eat.
Hot dogs are one of the worst foods to eat in this planet. We should outlaw hot dogs. I know that would not go over well, but want to solve the health crisis? Get rid of hot dogs.
Yeah, well, preservatives are difficult for.
Oh man, there's fats in there.
Woo. Yeah. So, anyway, let's just open that up a little bit about what I brought up before. Do you need to talk about your cooking? I didn't see what you made yesterday.
What did I make yesterday? Oh, I made shrimp in the honey shrimp. I made in the air fryer on a bed of rice, and I made my salad that I like so much. It's got cucumber, watermelon, tomato, mozzarella, a little bit of balsamic vinegar on it. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Good.
I found a menu, but it called for frying the fish, so I said no. I'm going to put it in the air fryer. And what else? They put heavy cream in this little sauce they made with the. So I didn't use heavy cream. I used almond milk and avocado mayonnaise to make the little sauce with honey. It's good.
Sounds good. And now, when you make a meal, do you make it? Will you eat for 2 days off that meal, or?
Sometimes I do that. Yesterday I did not. I just made enough that was for one meal. I get a big bag of shrimp from Costco, the tail off already. So I used part of that for the meal, and I cooked up the other half and put it in there. So yeah, I guess I really do. Now I've got cooked shrimp in the fridge there, so I can just heat up. So I've got about 3 or 4 meals going there. I broke down on Friday and had a little bit of a cheat day. I had steak. That was my cheat day.
Yeah.
And I wasn't happy with the way I cooked it. I did the pan seared. I hardly ever cook steak. So I looked up a recipe, saw a video where they pan seared it, but I think I got the steak was too thick. So the pan searing was taking too long, so I had to throw it in the oven for a bit. So I was not happy with my performance.
Just then, Tom would not approve of this, but I saw this yesterday on Facebook. A guy that I actually played Little League baseball with, who's on my Facebook, was saying he's a retired executive from a PR firm. But anyway, he was saying, I've been cooking hamburgers wrong all of these years. And he had it on, what do you cook the salmon on? Plank? He cooked a couple of burgers on and basically said it was the best burgers that he ever had. He cooked it on cedar plank or whatever it is that it is. So
my son had bought me a griddle from my barbecue. It's just a flat griddle. And I cook my turkey burgers out on that. That seems to come the best. Like they kind of sear all the juices inside and everything.
Well, you know what that griddle is very good for? If you're a fajita person, like you can do all your different the things you put on. You put your green peppers and your onions in little piles on each one, and your shrimp. Or my wife, of course, eats just like would eat vegetable fajitas, and you can put all your different.
Nice.
Thing. So
chars it up good there too. That's
my neighbor up at my lake house, he does that as well. He just got a new griddle too, as a matter of fact. So anyway, just going back to where I started this, I just wanted to talk about, I was thinking that when I was at the NFL game that, they feel they probably have it right now. Every 17 games, every game is so important. It's almost the perfect sport.
Yeah.
Because you have these huge games every Sunday. Like you can get at least to week 11 before you're mathematically eliminated, you can always think, well, even if you're 500, if I can win 3 in a row, if you're 3-3 and you win 3 in a row, you're 6-3. You're right in it. So it like keeps teams in it, and the wild card, they've done all that, and then of course, more importantly, and this is the point I wanted to talk about a little bit. They keep the injuries down. They only play once a week. You get time to recover from that. And I wondered whether, we do it right. Do we think, 82 games is the right number? We sometimes play, I bet we average 3.2 games a week, something like that. That's a total guess.
Yeah.
But sometimes we play more, we play 4 or 5. And, whenever you do that, like, in the media, we point out, well, they played 3 games in 5 nights. What do you expect? You can't expect them to play well. Actually, I agree with that too. We've talked about that before. Yeah. But what do you think? Is it 82? Is that right?
That's a fantastic question, because when you brought it up, it's like, geez, I don't know if I've ever really thought about it. I just kind of went along like this is just the way it's been, right? It was 80 games when I played. It's up to 82 now. I definitely, you brought up the playoffs before. Playoffs to me, I don't know how you can make them much better. The playoffs, they've been fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I would add a rat tail. Anybody who was a high school wrestler out there where you had a little rat tail at the end, I would have a play-in to get one of those or 2 of those spots.
I like that. So just a 1-game play-in?
1 game. I know baseball is actually changing it. I don't know why, because the 1-game playoff to me is great. And, people say, well, to play that whole regular season and then lose on 1 game, well, don't get yourself in that position then.
Exactly.
So
what the team that was currently would be in the playoffs under today's system would now have to play a 1-game playoff against another team that was next to them?
Yeah, I would say I would do it for the lowest seed in both the East and the West.
So you'd have 2 games.
Yeah, the 9th team in each conference would play 1 game. And this is my argument too. First of all, we have that happen all the time too. It just happens in game 82. Now it's going to happen in game 83.
Yeah.
And you could charge whatever you wanted and people will show up.
Oh,
and everybody would tune in. I would say it would get big rating.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Yeah. So you'd go to the city of the team that was highest in ranking, or you wouldn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to, and that's part of it. What else do you win if you get the AC? You get that home ice advantage on the rat tail game.
Sure.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would change that. But, Gary Bettman's against that. He thinks 16 teams is the right amount. And it's, we've reached the point that half the league now are close. No, it is half, 16 and 16.
Did we do something similar to that at the pandemic when it came back from the pandemic? Wasn't there a play in there?
Yeah, they did. We had extra. We had a 5th round.
Yeah, I remember that. That was fun. So, would you propose it all in one day, like on a Sunday or something like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, essentially, what I would do is the season would end on a Sunday, and on Monday we would play that game Monday night at 8:00, and then we'd start our playoffs again just like we normally do on Wednesday and Thursday.
Right. Oh, that'd be fun.
And they'd say, well, that's a disadvantage for that AC. They had to play that extra game, and then they got to come back right back 2 days. I say, tough. Don't finish 8th. Don't finish 8th.
Yeah. I guess, okay, so if I agree with you, I like the idea, but I guess the naysayers are also going to say, well, the risk of injury and all that kind of stuff. Well, any game you play, there's a risk of injury, yeah.
Well, to me, and the other thing too is I would sell those rights separately like baseball did. Like I would sell them to whomever, it doesn't really matter. So it wouldn't be ESPN or TNT that you'd bring in some other group to, maybe sell them to Fox.
Right.
So Fox would have those 2 playoff games, and
it's it'll be in April, right? So football's done with, baseball's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fox Sports, and they would sell those games, so they would be the thing. So it'd be a separate thing.
That's the ticket prices too, man.
I mean, imagine if Toronto 1 year was in those. I mean, you could charge $500.
Oh, that's like Toronto, Montreal, something like that, right?
Yeah, it would just be incredible. And
so it's just the two conferences then, right? You're not going per division.
no, I would just do two conferences.
No.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to get too big. That then it really means you're going 18 teams have a shot at the playoffs. So
right.
instead of 16.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so I would say that. I think 82 games is probably right.
How did we get to 82? Is there some reason that like going from 80 to 82? And obviously more revenue.
Well, I mean, I think at the time it made sense in terms of the geometry of the league, or the mathematics of the league,
right?
At the time, but now it doesn't work out so well.
Can you believe when I played, there was 21 teams and now there's 32?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And there's no reason for us to stop. I mean, Quebec should get a team at some point.
Because I was thinking back when I played and there's 21, I never would have thought we'd get to 32 teams. There's no way we can't expand that much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and if you're going to go 32, you might as well go 36. You got to go at least 34 because you don't want the extra game.
Yeah.
You really would, so, and we're going to have uneven divisions if you go 34 because you're going to have one division with 5 teams.
Yeah.
So
wow. So where's the next team go? Well, the big question is Phoenix going to last in Phoenix or Arizona, or are they going to move to Houston?
I don't know. I hear people tell me that the Houston situation is not as enticing as the media is making it out to be. That they just want the NHL there to have another tenant, but they would be the second tenant. They're not going to get the weekend games, So, I don't know whether that you want that. The guy doesn't want to own the team that owns the arena.
I talked to the guy. Somebody was asking around about had money or claimed they had money and they wanted to buy a team, and they talked about Houston. I talked to somebody there that ran the Houston arena. They just didn't think it was a good market there for hockey too. They had a minor league team there that didn't sell well, but that's a minor league team. But I think people would have said that about Vegas before too. That wouldn't have been a good market either. But look at the way things have gone there. So
yeah, I think wherever you go, it sells. I mean, it's just a new pro team. It's exciting.
How about the Toronto? There's plenty. We've got 3 teams here in Metro New York, and there's more fans around Toronto, hockey fans around Toronto, than there are hockey fans here. The fans are diehard fans here, and they have 3 teams from Zion. I can't believe that Toronto couldn't.
Yeah, although this is what I would say about that. I mean, I know your point. It's a valid one. It's Canada, for God's sakes. They like hockey.
Yeah.
But I think there's a risk because the Toronto Maple Leafs are such a historic franchise that we could end up with a Rangers New Jersey Devils situation where, there's another team there, but everybody is a Rangers fan and very few are Devils fans. And you can end up with, everybody is Maple Leafs fans. And then the new Toronto area team, wherever they call it, is just not going to have the same.
Yeah, there's a risk of that. I hear you. I don't think it would be like that, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe people would just, because I think the thought was when the Devils came aboard is, it was so hard to get a Ranger seat that people would just to be able to go see the NHL, but it really didn't work out that way. No Ranger fan left their team.
There's too many. Ranger fans are loyal. They don't. Ones out in Long Island the same way with.
I don't see Maple Leafs fans any less loyal.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, you're right. So, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've run too long here, but we wanted to get that in. Who knows? We may pick that up again. So if you have any thoughts on that, email Tom and we'll talk about it.
I like it.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in and listening to us. And we're getting closer to hockey. That means we're going to be talking a lot of hockey and stuff like this, things that maybe you don't think about that we sort of look at. So anyway, also, if you want to read me, TroyHockeyNow.com and also HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you'd like to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. And I'll be back at 11:30 with the great Mark Puttenvik. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you on Wednesday.